You heard him, Sarah. This house needs someone who knows what they're doing, someone with vision, someone with means. What are you going to do, scrape together your nurse's pennies? Don't kid yourself. Just take your share of the cash and get out of the way. The words, sharp as shattered glass and just as cold, echoed in the suddenly too small space of Mr. Peterson's law office. The air felt thick, heavy, not just with the scent of old paper and furniture polish, but with the phantom smell of Dad, that familiar mix of sawdust, pipe tobacco, and Old Spice aftershave. He'd only been gone 3 weeks, 3 surreal weeks that felt like 3 years, a blur of hushed phone calls, casseroles from neighbors, picking out a casket, shaking countless hands, and trying to process a world suddenly tilted on its axis. And now, this, my brother, Benjamin Jenkins, standing there under the fluorescent lights, a vulture circling before the body was even cold, a self-satisfied smirk already claiming territory that wasn't yet his. Mr. Peterson, our family lawyer for decades, a man whose comforting drone usually felt like stability itself, had just finished reading Dad's last will and testament. It was straightforward, like Dad himself. Everything split down the middle, 50-50, Ben and me. Except for the house. Dad, ever the pragmatist, knowing his children perhaps better than we knew ourselves, had included a specific clause, a 60-day window. Within that time, either Ben or I could offer to buy the other's half share at the fair market appraised value. If 60 days passed without a buyout, or if neither of us had the capacity or desire, then the house on Oak Street, the only home I'd ever really known, would be put on the market, sold to strangers, and the money divided equally. For Ben, this wasn't a clause. It was a directive, a confirmation of his birthright. He heard buyout option and immediately translated it to Ben gets the house. In his mind, I was already relegated to the proceeds split category. His words weren't just dismissive, they were steeped in a lifetime of casual, ingrained contempt. I was Sarah, good old Sarah, sensible, dependable, perpetually single, because who would want someone so boring, Sarah? The daughter who followed the safe path, who became a registered nurse because it offered security, benefits, a predictable schedule, all the things Ben found utterly pedestrian. The one who meticulously balanced her checkbook, drove a reliable but unexciting 10-year-old Honda Civic, and whose idea of a splurge was ordering takeout instead of cooking. Ben, of course, was the opposite. The golden child, the charmer, the one blessed with artistic talent and entrepreneurial spirit, labels Mom and Dad had eagerly bestowed, even as his spirit led him from one half-baked scheme to another. Freelance graphic designer, app developer, crypto investor, NFT curator. The titles changed, but the results were depressingly consistent. Bursts of initial enthusiasm followed by dwindling effort, missed deadlines, and inevitable requests for financial loans from Mom and Dad. Loans that everyone knew would never be repaid. He dressed better than me, drove flashier, usually leased cars, and always had a story about some big deal just around the corner. That house in Fairview, Pennsylvania. It was more than just timber framing and drywall to me. It was the repository of my entire childhood, the faint pencil marks on the kitchen doorframe charting our heights, mine steadily climbing, Ben's always seeming to leap ahead in impatient spurts. The specific creak of the third stair tread on the main staircase, the one I learned to skip religiously after lights out, the lingering scent of Dad's strong black coffee that permeated the mornings, mingling with the smell of toast. The massive, ancient oak tree dominating the backyard, its sturdy branches holding the ghosts of tire swings and clumsy attempts at tree houses. Dad, a master carpenter whose hands could coax magic from wood, had built so much of that house himself, the bookshelves lining the den, the intricate mantelpiece above the fireplace, the sturdy workbench in the garage that still held his tools in their precise places. He was a quiet man, expressing love through actions more than words, but his pride in Ben's effortless charm was always palpable, while my quiet achievements often seemed to register as mere background noise. I remember once, in high school, I won a statewide nursing scholarship. Dad had patted my shoulder, said, "That's nice, honey." The same week, Ben got an honorable mention in a local art contest, and Dad had taken the drawing, a passable sketch of a squirrel, to be professionally framed. It wasn't malicious, just the way things were. But when Dad's robust health began to fail, when the COPD tightened its grip and each breath became a conscious effort, who rearranged their life? Not Ben. He was too busy networking or chasing leads in the city an hour away. He'd call sometimes, his voice unnaturally loud and cheerful, promising to visit soon, a promise often broken. No, it was me. 12-hour shifts at Fairview General, juggling patient emergencies, deciphering doctors' handwriting, comforting frightened families, dealing with the constant hum of monitors and the metallic tang of antiseptic, followed by the drive across town to Dad's. I'd check his oxygen levels, organize his pillbox, cook meals he'd barely touch, listen to him reminisce about building the house, about Mom, about simpler times. Sometimes we'd just sit in the deepening twilight, the television murmuring unwatched, the silence comfortable, companionable. Ben might show up once, maybe twice a month, usually around the time his rent was due, breezing in with a gust of forced energy, talk about his latest game-changing project, borrow $50 just till next week, and vanish just as quickly, leaving behind a faint trail of expensive cologne and broken promises. So now, standing there in the sterile quiet of the law office, the ink barely dry on the document that marked Dad's final wishes, Ben's smug pronouncement, "Scrape together your nurse's pennies," felt like a physical blow. It wasn't just an insult to me. It felt like a desecration of Dad's memory, a dismissal of all those quiet hours I'd spent by his side when Ben was nowhere to be found. He assumed I was broke. He assumed I lacked ambition. He assumed I'd just roll over and accept the crumbs he offered. He had absolutely no clue. He didn't know about the promotion I'd worked my tail off for 5 years ago, becoming the head nurse of the telemetry unit. He didn't know about the salary increase that came with it, modest by his standards perhaps, but significant for me. He didn't know that for 8 solid years, fueled by a quiet determination to have something undeniably mine, I'd been aggressively saving. Every overtime shift, every holiday bonus, every tax refund, a significant portion went directly into a carefully managed portfolio of index funds and a high-yield savings account. My goal had been practical: a down payment on a small condo near the hospital, an escape from my cramped rental apartment. Owning Dad's house hadn't even been on my radar, but Ben's arrogance, his casual cruelty designed to put me firmly in my place, did something unexpected. It didn't crush me. It focused me. The grief was still a raw, open wound, but beneath it, a different kind of fire began to smolder. The slow, steady burn of indignation, fueled by years of being underestimated, of being the reliable, invisible support system while he soaked up the spotlight. He thought I didn't deserve it. He thought I couldn't afford it. Okay, Ben. Challenge accepted. "We'll see, Ben," I said. My voice didn't tremble. It came out low and steady, surprising even myself. I locked eyes with him, refusing to flinch. He held my gaze for a second, expecting me to look away as usual, then faltered, shifting his weight, suddenly uncomfortable with this unfamiliar lack of submission. 60 days, I added, repeating the time frame from the will like a promise to myself. The clock is ticking. I turned and walked out of Mr. Peterson's office, my sensible heels clicking decisively on the polished floor. I didn't look back, but I could almost feel Ben's bewildered stare boring into my back. He was likely already mentally spending his half of the house money, maybe even calling his buddies to brag. Let him. The grief was still a heavy weight on my shoulders, but now it was mixed with something else, a sharp, cold, invigorating sense of purpose. That house wasn't just an asset to be liquidated. It was Dad's legacy. It was the anchor of my past. And Benjamin Jenkins wasn't getting his entitled, careless hands on it without a fight. The 60 days that followed were a masterclass in Ben's unique brand of self-absorbed inconsideration. He wasted no time asserting his imaginary dominance over the property. Citing the need to oversee the estate and prevent squatters, a ludicrous notion in sleepy Fairview, he moved a duffel bag and a couple of boxes into the larger of the 2 spare bedrooms upstairs, the one with the nice view of the backyard. His presence instantly disrupted the quiet peace of the house, the peace I'd been trying to maintain as I slowly began the heartbreaking task of sorting through Dad's belongings. It started small. Dirty socks left on the living room floor, empty pizza boxes piling up on the kitchen counter, the volume on the TV always 3 notches too loud. Then it escalated. He started using Dad's tools from the garage without asking, leaving them scattered and dirty. He invited his equally obnoxious friends over for loud poker nights that stretched into the wee hours, filling the house with smoke and the clatter of beer bottles. One morning, I arrived to find a fresh cigarette burn marring the surface of the oak dining table Dad had built with his own hands. Ben's apology was a mumbled, "Whoops, guess Gary got a little careless." He treated the house not like a cherished family home filled with memories, but like a slightly run-down fraternity house he'd temporarily inherited. He talked incessantly about his grand renovation plans, usually while gesturing vaguely with a half-eaten sandwich. "Gotta open up this whole space," he declared one afternoon, standing in the doorway between the kitchen and dining room. "Knock down this wall, maybe put in an island with granite countertops. And the bathroom? Total gut job. Needs a jacuzzi tub." He spoke as if the funds for these imaginary projects were already in his bank account, as if my 50% ownership was a mere technicality soon to be erased. And then there were the relentless attempts to pressure me into selling him my share. Cheap. "Look, Sarah," he cornered me one evening as I was trying to pack up some of Dad's books. He leaned casually against the doorframe, blocking my exit, trying to project an air of brotherly concern. "I've been thinking, this house, it's a lot for you to handle. The upkeep, the property taxes, it's a burden. Tell you what, I'll be generous. 50 grand for your half. Cash. Think about it. No real estate agent fees, no closing costs, just clean and easy." 50 grand. It was barely more than his initial insulting offer at the lawyer's office. The property taxes alone were nearly $5,000 a year. "The will specifies fair market value, Ben," I reminded him, keeping my voice level, refusing to show the anger simmering beneath the surface. "We need an official appraisal." He rolled his eyes dramatically. "Appraisal? Why drag this out and spend money unnecessarily? It's just family. 50K is more than fair, sis. Honestly, with the market the way it is and the repairs needed, I'm probably overpaying. But hey, I'm trying to help you out here." He even managed a pained expression, as if doing me a massive favor. His tactics were varied but consistent. Sometimes it was the faux concerned brother routine. Other times it was passive aggression, leaving brochures for tiny, depressing rental apartments on the kitchen table where I couldn't miss them. Occasionally, it was veiled threats. "You know," he mused one day, watching me meticulously wrap one of Mom's porcelain figurines, "if this drags on past the 60 days and we have to sell, well, forced sales never get top dollar. And the legal fees, they can really eat into the inheritance. We could both end up with a lot less." He was trying to scare me into accepting his lowball offer out of fear. There were dark moments during those weeks, usually late at night in my own silent apartment, when the sheer weight of it all threatened to crush me. Grief was a heavy, unpredictable fog. My job at the hospital was demanding, filled with its own daily dramas of life, death, and human suffering. And then there was Ben. His constant presence, his undermining comments, his utter disregard for Dad's memory and my feelings. Doubt gnawed at me. Was I being foolish? Was I letting emotion cloud my judgment, taking on a mortgage, depleting my hard-earned savings? It was a monumental risk. Maybe Ben was right. Maybe I should just take the money and walk away, find that sensible little condo I'd originally planned for. It would be easier, simpler, safer. One particularly grueling Tuesday, after losing a long-term patient I'd grown fond of, I drove to the house feeling utterly drained, defeated. I just wanted to sit in Dad's old armchair in the den, wrap myself in the familiar quiet, and maybe feel close to him for a little while. I let myself in the back door and stopped dead in the hallway. The den, Dad's sanctuary, looked like it had been ransacked. Cushions were thrown haphazardly, empty chip bags lay crumpled on the floor, and there was a distinct smell of stale beer and something vaguely illicit. On Dad's beloved roll-top desk, amidst a scattering of playing cards and poker chips, sat a sticky ring where a wet glass had been left, staining the rich wood finish. And leaning against the leg of the desk, propped up like an afterthought, was Dad's prized acoustic guitar, the one he taught me my first clumsy chords on, with a long, ugly scratch down its polished front. Ben emerged from the kitchen, yawning, scratching his stomach. "Oh, hey," he said nonchalantly. "Had a couple of the guys over last night. Got a bit late." He didn't even seem to notice the state of the room, or perhaps he simply didn't care. That was the precise moment the last shred of doubt evaporated. It wasn't just carelessness anymore. It was a profound lack of respect, a fundamental inability to value anything beyond his own immediate gratification. He wouldn't just neglect the house. He would actively destroy the soul of it. The anger that flared up wasn't hot and explosive, but cold and sharp, honing my resolve to a razor's edge. This wasn't about sibling rivalry anymore. It was about preservation. It was about duty. My mindset shifted. I stopped reacting to Ben's provocations and started strategizing. The years spent managing chaotic emergencies on the hospital floor kicked in. Assess the situation. Identify the objective. Formulate a plan. Execute calmly under pressure. Ben saw me as just a nurse. He had no concept of the logistical complexities, the split-second decisions, the emotional fortitude required in my profession. Dealing with his juvenile antics and securing a mortgage suddenly seemed like a manageable problem set compared to juggling multiple critical patients during an understaffed night shift. The crucial piece of intel fell into my lap quite by accident a few days later. I'd gone over mid-afternoon to retrieve a box of Dad's tax records needed for the estate. The house was quiet. I assumed Ben was out. As I was gathering the files in the den, I heard his voice from the living room, low and urgent, tight with an anxiety I'd never heard from him before. He was on his cell phone, pacing back and forth, oblivious to my presence. "Marco, listen, I swear I'll have it," he was whispering frantically. "The deal with the house is almost done. Yeah, my sister, she's being difficult, but she'll sign. Another week, maybe 2, tops." "What do you mean, no more time?" "It was that damn crypto crash, Marco. You know that. Everyone got wiped out." "No, please, just tell your guy to give me till the end of the month. I can get at least $100K out of this place once she signs." He hung up abruptly, letting out a shaky breath and slumping onto the sofa, running agitated hands through his hair. He looked pale and genuinely scared. Crypto debt. Serious threats. 100K. Far more than the 50 he was offering me. It all snapped into focus with blinding clarity. His urgency wasn't just impatience, it was sheer panic. He wasn't planning renovations. He was planning a fire sale or a quick mortgage flip to pay off dangerous people he owed money to. He needed my signature not just to gain the house, but to save his own skin. That overheard conversation changed everything. It wasn't just fuel for my anger anymore. It was tactical information. His desperation became my leverage. The power dynamic shifted instantly. He wasn't the condescending older brother holding all the cards. He was a cornered gambler bluffing with an empty hand. That same afternoon, skipping the trip back to my apartment, I drove straight to the downtown branch of Fairview Community Bank. I didn't have an appointment, but I hoped Maria Reyes, a loan officer whose young son I'd treated for a nasty playground fracture the previous summer, might have a few minutes. Luckily, she did. Ushering me into her small, neat office, she offered me a water bottle and a sympathetic ear. I laid everything out. Not the messy family drama, just the facts. My 8 years of steady employment at Fairview General, my recent promotion, my excellent credit score, a point of quiet pride, the detailed statements from my savings and investment accounts, the purpose of the loan, to exercise my option to buy my brother's share of our late father's house under the terms of the will. I presented my pay stubs, my tax returns, my bank statements. I was organized, prepared. Maria listened intently, nodding occasionally, tapping figures into her computer. She asked pertinent questions about my income, my existing debts, minimal, just my car payment and student loans, nearly paid off, my projected budget including mortgage, taxes, and insurance. She scrutinized my savings. Finally, after what felt like an eternity but was probably only 15 minutes, she leaned back in her chair, a professional but warm smile lighting up her face. "Sarah," she said, her voice kind but businesslike, "based on everything you've shown me, your debt-to-income ratio is excellent, your credit is stellar, and you have a very substantial down payment here, well over the 20% required to avoid PMI. Getting you pre-approved for a mortgage sufficient to cover the $155,000 buyout plus estimated closing costs? Honestly, it's a slam dunk. We can start the application process right now if you like." A wave of relief, so intense it made my knees feel weak, washed over me. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, blurring the framed photos of Maria's smiling kids on her desk. It was real. It was possible. Ben's carefully constructed narrative of my financial inadequacy, the one he'd used to try and bully me, was nothing but hot air. My next call was to Mr. Peterson. "Mr. Peterson, Sarah Jenkins calling," I said, my voice resonating with newfound confidence. "I need 2 things, please. First, could you recommend a reputable, certified, and completely independent home appraiser? I need the appraisal done as soon as possible for financing purposes. Second, please schedule a final meeting for myself and Benjamin at your office on the afternoon of August 14th. August 14th was exactly 60 days after the will reading. "The purpose of the meeting," I continued, choosing my words carefully, "is to finalize the disposition of the property at 12 Oak Street as per the terms of the will. And, Mr. Peterson," I added, lowering my voice slightly, "I would appreciate it if the specific nature of the final transaction, my intention to buy, is not disclosed to Benjamin prior to that meeting." There was a brief, perhaps surprised pause on the other end. Then Mr. Peterson's dry voice came back. "Understood completely, Sarah. I'll arrange the meeting and email you the contact details for Thomas R. Billings Appraisal Services. They are thorough and impartial. Consider it handled." The appraisal process was nerve-wracking. Tom Billings, a meticulous man who seemed to know every nook and cranny of Fairview real estate, spent nearly 3 hours inspecting the house. Ben was home, lurking in the background, trying to subtly point out flaws, a sticky window here, a patch of peeling paint there, clearly hoping to drive the valuation down. I hovered anxiously, worried Ben might succeed, or that some hidden issue would derail everything, but Mr. Billings was thorough. His final report arrived a few days later. Fair market value, $310,000. Higher than my initial estimate, solidifying the $155,000 figure for Ben's share. It was a significant sum, requiring almost all my liquid savings for the down payment and closing costs, plus the mortgage commitment, but the bank loan was approved. I spent the ensuing weeks quietly assembling the financial pieces, signing stacks of paperwork with Maria at the bank, arranging the wire transfers, ensuring every detail was meticulously coordinated with Mr. Peterson's office. Ben, cocooned in his bubble of arrogance, remained oblivious. As the August 14th deadline loomed, his attempts to pressure me intensified. He'd leave sticky notes on my car windshield. "Call me! Need to finalize house stuff." He'd catch me coming or going, his tone shifting between wheedling and demanding. "Seriously, Sarah, stop dragging your feet. My offer of $50K is still on the table, but it expires soon. Don't be stupid about this." His absolute certainty that I was trapped, that I had no alternative but to yield to his demands, was almost comical if it hadn't been so infuriating. He interpreted my calm refusals and quiet demeanor not as strategic silence, but as the paralysis of defeat. The afternoon before the meeting, he sent me a text. "Hey sis, hope we're ready for tomorrow. No hard feelings, yeah, just business." The winking emoji felt like a final twist of the knife. I simply replied, "See you at Peterson's office at 2 p.m. August 14th dawned bright and clear, a perfect late summer day. I chose my outfit carefully, a charcoal gray pantsuit, Crisp white blouse, low heels, armor. I felt a strange sense of calm as I walked into the familiar waiting room of Peterson, Mills and Associates. The receptionist offered a polite smile. I'd done everything I could. All the documents were signed, the funds secured, and waiting in escrow. The outcome was no longer in doubt. Ben arrived 5 minutes late, radiating smug confidence. He wore ripped designer jeans and a slightly too tight band t-shirt, carrying a battered envelope that presumably held his pathetic $50,000 buyout offer. He gave me a condescending nod and sauntered into the conference room. "All right, Petey," he boomed, slapping Mr. Peterson jovially on the back. "Let's wrap this up. Got places to be. Just need Sarah to sign on the dotted line." He tossed the envelope onto the polished mahogany table. Mr. Peterson, impeccably dressed as always, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and cleared his throat. He ignored Ben's casual disrespect. He looked first at Ben, then at me, his expression unreadable. He picked up a thick, professionally bound stack of documents from his side of the table. "Actually, Benjamin," he began, his voice calm and formal, cutting through Ben's bluster, "we have a different transaction to execute today, strictly adhering to the terms outlined by your father." Ben's self-assured grin flickered. "Huh? What terms? What are you talking about?" "Article 4, Section B of your father's last will and testament," Mr. Peterson recited, as if reading from scripture, "stipulates that either heir possesses the right to purchase the other heir's 50% interest in the real property located at 12 Oak Street, Fairview, Pennsylvania, at its independently appraised fair market value, provided said option is exercised within 60 calendar days of the initial reading of this will." He paused. An independent appraisal was commissioned by Sarah and conducted by Thomas R. Billings Appraisal Services. The certified fair market value of the property as of July 28th was determined to be $310,000. Ben's jaw tightened. $310,000? That's insane. The place needs a new roof. The plumbing is ancient. Mr. Peterson held up a silencing hand. "The appraisal considered the property's condition and is deemed accurate and binding for the purposes of executing this clause. Therefore, the value of a 50% share is established at $155,000. He let the number settle in the suddenly quiet room. Then, he turned his gaze directly to me, a flicker of something, respect, approval, in his eyes. "Sarah," he announced formally, "has chosen to exercise her option under Article 4, Section B. She has secured the necessary financing through Fairview Community Bank and has already deposited the full purchase amount of $155,000, plus all relevant closing costs, into the firm's escrow account. Benjamin, these documents finalize the sale of your 50% interest in the property to Sarah." He slid the thick stack of closing documents across the table towards Ben. Complete, stunned silence descended. Ben stared at the documents as if they were venomous snakes. His head swiveled from the papers to Mr. Peterson, then to me. His face cycled through a kaleidoscope of emotions in rapid succession: utter confusion, flickering disbelief, dawning comprehension, and finally, erupting into a mask of pure, undiluted fury. "What?" he roared, leaping to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. He slammed his fist onto the table, making the water carafe jump. "No! Impossible! She can't! Where the hell?" He spat the words, turning on me, his face mottled red and white. "Did you get that kind of money? Did you rob a bank? Did you inherit some secret fortune Dad never told me about?" His voice dripped with venomous disbelief. "You sneaky, conniving... You've been planning this all along, going behind my back." I didn't flinch. I met his enraged glare with a stillness that felt incredibly powerful. "I work hard, Ben," I stated, my voice quiet but carrying easily in the tense atmosphere. "I live below my means. I manage my money responsibly." I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice just enough so only he and Mr. Peterson could hear clearly. "And unlike some people, I don't gamble away my future on volatile crypto schemes I don't understand." The blood drained from his face instantly. He recoiled as if I'd physically slapped him. The mention of his crypto debt, the secret shame fueling his desperation, hit its mark. He knew that I knew. All the bluster, the lifelong arrogance, the carefully cultivated image of the effortlessly successful golden boy, it shattered into a million pieces right there on Mr. Peterson's expensive carpet. He opened his mouth, maybe to deny it, maybe to lash out again, but no sound came out. He just stood there swaying slightly, utterly deflated. Beaten. There was nothing else to say. Mr. Peterson, ever the professional, calmly guided Ben back to his chair and methodically explained the documents, pointing where signatures were required. Ben sat slumped, signing where indicated with a hand that visibly trembled, his face a mask of sullen resentment. He didn't say another word. When the last page was signed, he practically flung the pen across the table, shoved his chair back, and stalked out of the conference room, slamming the heavy oak door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. I remained seated, a tremor running through me now that the confrontation was over. I meticulously signed my portion of the closing documents, the crisp paper feeling solid and real beneath my fingers. Owner of record, Sarah Jenkins. A complex cocktail of emotions swirled inside me. Profound relief, bone-deep exhaustion, lingering grief for Dad, but also a clear, strong current of vindication. I hadn't just bought a house. I'd bought back my self-respect. I had stood my ground, honored Dad's true wishes, and won. Not through malice, but through competence and quiet determination. The reality of his situation seemed to crash down on Ben over the next few days. Losing the house wasn't just a blow to his ego. It was the removal of his financial safety net, the one he was counting on to appease the Marcos of his world. His sporadic freelance gigs weren't enough to cover his debts and rent somewhere new. He was, for all intents and purposes, broke and homeless. About a week after the closing, late on a Thursday evening after I'd just gotten home from a long shift, my doorbell rang. Peeking through the peephole, I saw Ben standing on the porch, hunched under the dim yellow light, looking utterly wretched. Gone was the arrogance, the swagger. He looked diminished, smaller. I opened the door part way. He wouldn't meet my eyes at first, focusing instead on a crack in the porch concrete. "Sarah," he mumbled, his voice rough. Look, I know I acted like a total jackass. About the house. About, well, everything. I really screwed up. Big time." He finally looked up, and the desperation in his eyes was raw, undisguised. "Thing is, I'm in a really tight spot. Those guys I owe money to, they're not kidding around. And my landlord, he kinda kicked me out when the rent was late again." He took a shaky breath. "I literally have nowhere else to go tonight. Is there any chance maybe I could rent the spare room? Just for a little while? Like a month or two? Just till I can figure things out? I'll pay rent. Whatever you think is fair. I swear." And there it was. The absolute stunning reversal of fortune. The brother who had sneered at my nurse's pennies, who had declared me unworthy of setting foot in Dad's house as anything other than a visitor, was now standing on the doorstep, practically begging to become my tenant in that very house. A wave of satisfaction washed over me, not a gloating, vindictive pleasure, but the quiet, deeply resonant hum of cosmic justice being served. The universe, it seemed, had a wicked sense of irony. I leaned against the door jamb, deliberately mirroring the casual, dismissive posture he'd adopted weeks earlier when he'd tried to bully me with his insulting lowball offer. I thought about the poker chip stains on Dad's desk, the cracked photo frame, the burned patch on the lawn, the years of being the overlooked, responsible one. I thought about Dad and what he truly would have wanted. Not for his children to be estranged, perhaps, but certainly for his home to be respected. "All right, Ben," I said, my voice cool, even, strictly business. "The small back bedroom, the one that overlooks the garden." I named a figure slightly above the average room rental rate in Fairview, factoring in his share of utilities. $800 a month. I'll need the first month's rent plus an $800 security deposit paid in full, up front, cleared funds, due by 5 p.m. tomorrow if you want the key. He blinked, momentarily taken aback. $800? For that little room? Sarah, come on, isn't that a bit steep for family? It's the fair market rate, Ben, I replied smoothly, no hint of compromise in my tone. Including your estimated share of utilities, gas, electric, water, internet. Those actual utility costs will be split 50-50 each month based on the bills. I'll provide copies, and your share is due within 3 days of receiving them. The rent and deposit are non-negotiable. He swallowed hard, looking cornered. Okay. $1,600 by tomorrow. He sounded like he was calculating frantically in his head how he could possibly pull that together. And there are house rules, I continued, ticking them off mentally before speaking. Strict rules. No smoking inside or outside on the property. No drugs. No loud noise, music, TV, guests after 10 p.m. on weeknights, midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. No overnight guests whatsoever without my express prior permission, given at least 24 hours in advance. And absolutely none. I paused, meeting his eyes. Of your rowdy friends are welcome here. Ever. You are expected to clean up after yourself immediately and thoroughly in all common areas, kitchen, bathroom, living room. That means dishes washed and put away, counters wiped, spills cleaned, bathroom left tidy. Your bedroom is your own space, but you're responsible for keeping it clean and reporting any maintenance issues immediately. I reserve the right to reasonable inspection with proper notice, according to state law. Furthermore, I added, you will contribute equally to general household chores. We'll alternate weeks for taking the trash and recycling bins to the curb. Lawn mowing and basic yard work. We split that too. There will be a chore chart. I let the conditions hang in the air. The initial lease agreement will be for a fixed term of 6 months, no exceptions. After that, if both parties agree, it can convert to month, requiring 30 days written notice from either of us to terminate tenancy. Rent is due electronically transferred to my designated account on the first calendar day of each month. No grace period. There is a $50 late fee assessed if the full amount is not received by 11:59 p.m. on the 1st. If rent is more than 5 calendar days late, I will immediately file for eviction with the county court. No sob stories, Ben. No excuses. I looked him squarely in the eye, letting the gravity of the situation settle. Let me be perfectly clear. This is not me doing you a favor out of sibling loyalty. This is a legally binding landlord-tenant agreement. You will be my tenant. I will be your landlord. You will follow the rules, or you will face the consequences, same as any other tenant. Do you understand these terms? He stared down at his worn sneakers, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He nodded slowly, miserably. Yeah, he mumbled. Yeah, I understand. Clear. Good, I said briskly. I will draft a standard Pennsylvania lease agreement outlining all these terms and email it to you within the hour. Read every single word. If you agree to all conditions and can provide proof of the $1,600 payment by 5 p.m. tomorrow, you can schedule a time with me to move your essential belongings in on Saturday. I didn't offer him a glass of water, didn't invite him inside out of the evening chill. I simply stepped back and closed the door firmly, leaving him alone on the porch, illuminated by the single, unflattering bulb. The click of the deadbolt sliding into place felt decisive, final. To my surprise, he actually did it. An email confirmation of a wire transfer for $1,600 hit my inbox at 4:48 p.m. the next day. He signed the lease electronically, without comment or requested changes. On Saturday morning, he showed up with 2 suitcases and 3 moving boxes, the sum total of his worldly possessions, it seemed. He moved into the small back bedroom, the one that had once been Mom's sewing room, its single window offering a clear view of the rose bushes he now had a contractual obligation to help maintain. Life in the house on Oak Street settled into a new, albeit somewhat bizarre, rhythm. Ben is subdued. He keeps mostly to himself, emerging from his room for meals or to use the bathroom, occasionally mumbling a hello or excuse me in the hallway. The arrogant swagger is gone, replaced by a wary, almost furtive air. He comes and goes at odd hours, likely juggling low-paying graphic design gigs scraped together online, or perhaps meeting with the people he owes money to. He pays his rent. On the first of the month, exactly $800 appears in my account. He even pays his share of the utilities without argument, though sometimes with a heavy sigh when I slide the printed bills under his door. He cleans the kitchen counters after making himself instant ramen, though his idea of clean and mine still occasionally require clarification via politely worded texts. Seeing him take out the recycling bins on Tuesday nights or reluctantly pull weeds in the flower beds on a Saturday morning, living as a boarder under the strict rules set by the sister he so thoroughly disdained. It's a daily tableau of quiet consequence. There's no overt gloating from me, no I told you so's, just a consistent business-like enforcement of the lease agreement. I am polite but maintain a professional distance. I am the homeowner, the landlord. He is the tenant. Period. Meanwhile, I'm finally, truly making the house my own. I had the leaky faucet in the kitchen replaced, hired a service to deep clean the carpets, and spent a weekend painting the living room a warm, inviting color Dad would have liked. I carefully polished the scratch off his guitar and hung it back in its place of honor in the den. I bought a new, comfortable armchair just for me. I planted vibrant marigolds and zinnias in the front garden beds. Filling the space with my own energy, my own choices, feels incredibly empowering. It feels peaceful. It feels like home, earned not just through money, but through resilience. The oppressive weight of Ben's lifelong judgment has lifted, replaced by the quiet, solid confidence of knowing I faced down adversity and claimed my rightful place. Dad's roof is securely over my head, and for the first time in my life, I am unequivocally the one making the rules. His 6-month lease term is now halfway over. He hasn't violated any major rules, hasn't thrown any wild parties, or defaulted on rent, but there are no signs of a miraculous turnaround either. He still looks stressed, still seems to be just scraping by. The question hangs in the air, unspoken but unavoidable. What happens when February 14th rolls around, marking the end of the 6 months? So, this is where I turn to you. When the lease expires in 3 months, assuming Ben hasn't suddenly become financially stable and self-sufficient, what is the right course of action? What would you do in my shoes? A. Show a degree of compassion. Offer to renew the lease, perhaps on a month-to-month basis, giving him a bit more time to get properly back on his feet, provided he continues to strictly adhere to all rules. B. Business is business. The agreement was for 6 months. Stick firmly to the original terms and inform him he needs to vacate the property at the end of the lease, allowing me to fully reclaim my space and peace of mind. Tell me honestly, what path should I choose?